All right. Yesterday, we looked at creating arrays and putting stuff inside of arrays and accessing individual elements of arrays. Now, an array is not going to be very efficient if you look at every single element individually. Because if I look at every single element individually one at a time, I might as well just use a regular old variable, right? If I'm going to have a line of code where I look at the 0th element, then the 1th element, then the 2th element, then the 3rd element, so on and so forth, then what's the point of an array? I might as well just use a regular variable in that case. Well, today I'm going to show you how you can use a for loop to actually make arrays more powerful, faster to process, and it makes it so that no matter how long your array is, you can look at all of the data inside of that array. So, traversing arrays with for loops. Probably not a bad idea to write down just a quick review of how a for loop works. I'm going to do that on my note sheet because for some of us it's been a hot minute since we've been talking about for loops. So maybe we should do that really quick here. I'm going to write for. I'm just going to write a very basic for loop here. I is less than, but I'm going to use length in this one. Array name dot length and I plus plus. So the different parts of a for loop, for those of us, it's been a minute for some of us. This part over here, sometimes we call this the start. Sometimes we call this the initializing expression as well. It basically tells you what to start counting at. It says what variable is going to be doing the counting, I in this case, and what's it going to start counting at? 0. This part in the middle right here, sometimes we call this the stop. Sometimes we call it the control. Essentially, you keep going while this is true. It tells you what you want your variable to count up to. And this says, in this case, it says keep going while I is less than array name.length. So I is going to count up to, but not including the length of the array. And then this last part over here, oh, what's a good color? How about purple? This last guy over here, this is my step expression. It tells me what to count by. So sometimes we call it the count as well. So that's just a quick for loop review for some of us. And basically what happens is, in your for loop, I would start at 0. And it would check, is 0 less than the array name.length? If it is, then it would do whatever's inside the loop. Then I would get incremented using that count or that step expression on the end. Then I would become 1. And then it would check the control expression again. Then I would become 2. It would check the control expression again, and so on and so forth, until the condition, the control in the middle is no longer true. Does this look familiar? Does anybody have any quick questions on for loops before we move on? We remember this a little bit? Okay. All right. It says, in the last lesson, we mentioned that you can use a variable for the index of an array. You can even do math with that index, like you guys did in your homework assignment last night, and have an arithmetic expression inside the square brackets like below. So, for example, here's a variable. Index takes on the value of 3. When I say high scores sub index, this will basically say make high scores sub 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, change this one to 11. And then when it says print out high scores sub index, well, what is high scores sub 3 now? Well, it's 11. When I say print out high scores sub index minus 1, well, index minus 1, index doesn't change, but 3 minus 1 is 2. The 2th element would be 8 in this case. So that would print out 11 and 8. And you guys did your homework last night, so you did many things like that, but does anybody have any questions there? Okay. It says, what do you think the following code will print out? First, trace through it on paper. We don't have to do it on paper necessarily. We can put comments in here. Keeping track of the array and the index variable, then run it to see if you were right. Maybe we can do this together here, doing some tracing. I'm going to keep track of whatever the value of index is. So I'm also going to keep track of what these index numbers are. 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's see. Index starts at 1. It says print out name sub index minus 1. So this will be 1 minus 1 in here. 1 minus 1 we know is 0. So what do we think this is going to print out for name sub 0? Jamal. Okay, so this is going to print out Jamal here. When I say index minus 1, does index actually change? No. Index minus 1 just means evaluate what 1 minus 1 is. Now, that being said, what does index plus plus do? It actually adds 1 to the index and changes it. So when I say index plus plus changes the value of index by going up by 1. Now it says print out name sub index. Well, index is now 2. What's going to be printed out on this line? Destiny, very good. Let's see. Index does not change here. Here it says take index and divide it by 2. Well, 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I'm going to print out what's at 1. That looks like Emily in that case. Notice index is still 2. Then it says change name sub index 2 to Rafi. 0, 1, 2. Destiny just became Rafi up here. Maybe I'll do it in blue. Destiny just became Rafi. I know there's quotations around her name. Then index minus minus. This will change index. So index minus 1. That becomes 1. And then it says print out name sub index plus 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Index sub 2 is now Rafi. So I think this will print Jamal, Destiny, Emily, and Rafi. You guys on board with that? Jamal, Destiny, Emily, and Rafi? Let's see, is that true? Jamal, Destiny, Emily, and Rafi. Sure enough. So what's the point of this activity? Well, you can use indices to keep track of different variable values. Some quick notes here. When I just say index minus 1, that does not change the value of index. What are some expressions that do change the value of index? Well, index minus minus changes the value of index. Index plus plus changes the value of index. Other values, index plus equals something. Index minus equals something would also change the value of index. So any of those would actually change the value of a variable. But if I just say minus 1 or divide by 2 on a line all by itself without any equal signs, that's not actually going to change that variable. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. All right. Here's kind of what I wanted to show you. I put together an array of friends, and in my array of friends, I put Chandler, Joey, Ross, Phoebe, and Rachel. I know you guys are like, where's Monica? It was a hard choice between Monica and Rachel, but Monica didn't make it because her name is, well, the same length as Rachel. I just don't like Monica that much, sorry. If you're a Friends fan, if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay too. Maybe it's preferred. So I've got an array of friends here. I've got Chandler at index 0, Joey at index 1, Ross at index 2, Phoebe at index 3, Rachel at index 4. Now yesterday we looked at an array like this with our movie titles, and we said you can print out each one by doing, friends sub 0, friends sub 1, friends sub 2, friends sub 3, friends sub 4. Well, what if instead of that you just used a for loop? Let's think about the values that I would take on in this for loop. Looking at this for loop, what would I start at? 0. The start is at 0. So when I say friends sub I, that's going to be friends sub 0. That would be Chandler. Now, what's going to happen to I after the loop? I plus plus, I would get incremented. The value of I is now 1. Is 1 less than friends.length? What is friends.length? Let's say that first. 5. There's 5 elements, so this is basically saying keep going while I is less than 5. So 1 is less than 5, so now I is 1. Friends sub 1 is Joey. Then I go ahead and do the step expression after the for loop. I becomes 2. Is 2 less than 5? Yes. Friends sub 2 will now be Ross. Then I go ahead and do the step expression. It becomes 3. Is 3 less than 5? Yes. Friend sub 3 is now going to be Phoebe. I gets incremented by 1. Is 4 less than 5? Absolutely. So now friend sub 4 is going to be Rachel. I gets incremented by 1. It becomes 5. Is 5 less than 5? No, I get kicked out of the loop. Why is it important here that I write less than friends.length instead of less than or equal to friends.length? Yeah, what do you remember the error from yesterday? Yeah, array out of bounds, the out of bounds exception. So it's very important that when I write a for loop like this, I write less than instead of less than or equal to. And essentially, I'm using this I variable, this index, this variable for the index inside of my array here. And that'll allow me to look at every single one. If this array contained 100 friends instead of 5 friends, what would I have to change about the loop? Anything? A lot of us are looking at other stuff like books and things like that. That's okay. Maybe we're absorbing this through osmosis. Maybe it's a computer science book. Why not? No, if this had 100 friends, I would not have to change a thing about this loop because then friends.length will be 100. If this is 1,000 friends, it's the exact same loop. If it's 1,000,000 friends, exact same loop. So if you can write this loop and use your variable as an index, you can process an array of any length. Do we see why that might be helpful? You can look at every single element in the array one at a time. Friend sub I is going to be an element of your array, one after another, after another, after another, until you hit the end of the array. Think about that. Instead of having 1,000 lines of code for 1,000 different variables that you're checking, you can look at all of them in like 2 lines. A for loop followed by the name of your array and using that index there. Does that make sense? We're going to look at it a lot today if it doesn't make sense yet. All right. Back to the notes here. It says, for loop to traverse arrays. We can use, let me zoom in a little bit. We can use iteration with a for loop to visit each element of an array. This is called traversing the array. Just start at the index at 0 and loop while the index is less than the length of the array. Note that the variable I, short for index, is often used in loops as the loop counter variable and is used here to access each element of an array with its index. So I believe you have this loop written down on your notes somewhere, right here. You want to know this for loop like the back of your hand. Now, alone by itself it doesn't do much, but inside of that loop, if you say something like array name sub I, array name sub I is going to take on the value of every single index. Basically, the for loop makes I loop over every single index in your array, as the last question of the Kahoot we just did would tell you. So I is going to loop through every possible index, and if I say array name sub I, this is going to be every possible element in my array, one after another, after another, after another, sequentially in order there. So I loops over the index, array sub I is the actual elements that are in your array. So if that doesn't make sense, maybe you want to write it down. These are the actual elements in the array. Okay. There we go. All right, let's look more at this. It says, for example, here's a loop traversing the high scores array to print every score. Follow the code below in the visualizer. Don't worry, I already clicked on the visualizer and got it loaded up here for you guys. So there's an array called high scores that contains 1, 2, 3, 4 different scores that are 10, 9, 8, and 8. The individual elements of the array are at index 0 is 10, at index 1 is 9, at index 2 is 8, and index 3 is also 8. Let's see what happens here. This is one of these visualizers where it's going to show us the different values. Here it says the high scores array is created, and this is what it looks like. There's its values with their indices in a row. Then the for loop happens. The for loop starts I at 0. So when I say high scores sub, I is currently 0, that should print out 10. Let's see if that's a true story. It prints out 10. Then what happens to I? The step expression. I becomes 1. As you can see over here, I is now 1. Is 1 less than the array's name.length, high scores.length? Yes, 1 is less than 4. So then it's going to print out whatever's at index 1, which should be 9. Let's see if 9 prints out in the output window. It does. Watch what happens to I next. What's going to happen to I? It goes up by 1. It's 2 now. Is 2 less than 4? Yes. So 2 now gets used. This is going to get used as the index here. High scores sub 2. So next thing I should see is that 2 gets used, so 8 should be printed out up here in the window. It is. What's going to happen to I? It'll get incremented by 1. It becomes 3. Is 3 less than 4? Indeed it is. This should be the last value in my array because it's going to be the second 8 here. That second 8 prints out. I gets stepped up to 4. Is 4 less than 4? No. The loop is over. That's my output. I am at the end of my program. Are we kind of being able to visualize what's happening here? Okay, okay. You would tell me if you were not? Okay, all right. It says using a variable as the index is a powerful data abstraction feature because it allows us to use loops with arrays where the loop counter variable is the index of the array. This allows our code to generalize to work for the whole array. So if I added 1,000,000 more scores to this high scores array, you know how many lines of code I would have to change? Just that, yeah, maybe just that one where I add the extra high scores, but the rest of it is still going to work exactly right. So it doesn't matter how big your array is as long as you write this for loop correctly, because Java is going to count the length of the array. Your programming language will count the length of the array for you, where I is just looping over every single index one after another after another. It says, what do you think the following code will print out? First, trace through it on paper, keeping track of the array and the index variable. Okay, I'll do this real quick with you guys. Here's I. Let me write down my indices as well. What value does I start at? 0. So when I go through this loop, I is less than 5, the length of the array. Yes, it is. So name sub 0 would print out Jamal. Then I gets kicked up to 1. 1 is less than 5. Name sub 1 will print out Emily. I gets kicked up to 2. 2 is less than 5. Name sub 2 will print out Destiny. I gets kicked up to 3. 3 is less than 5. This will print out Mateo. I gets kicked up by 1 to 4. 4 is less than 5, so name sub 4 will print out Sophia. I gets kicked up by 1 to 5. 5 is no longer less than 5. I get kicked out after it prints out Jamal, Emily, Destiny, Mateo, and Sophia, I believe. Go ahead and add your name here, or add a couple more if you want to. Ecal. If you add another name, notice I added one more name. The length of the array changed. My loop did not change, and it still works perfectly. Heck, if I wanted to, I could double the length of the array. Here, I can go ahead and copy this, put a comma in front of it, and now I just doubled the length of my array. Yeah, maybe it'll be like I'll have a tournament for the who's everybody on Earth here, right? I double it again. It just keeps. I don't have to change my code at all. So how is this powerful? How is this useful? Well, imagine I'm trying to find a class test score average or something like that. And one class has 29, one class has 30, one class has 31. If I'm adding them all up and dividing by the amount of things, I don't have to change my loop. I can just write one loop and it's going to work no matter how long the array is. Does that kind of make sense? Do we see how this would be more useful than having a different name variable for Jamal, for Emily, for Destiny, for Mateo, for Sophia, for Ecal? If I had a different variable for each one of those, then I would have to have a separate line printing each one of those every single time. Instead, if I have an array of 1,000,000, I just need the 2 lines of code, my for loop and my print statement inside the for loop. Are we seeing the power of this yet? Yeah. Yeah, you have the power in your hands. Questions so far? I think this is a good time to take our 2-minute break then. Go ahead and stretch your legs, get a quick drink of water if you need one. All right, so the idea with this array, this for loop, is that you can write one for loop and it'll work no matter how long your array is. So what is some stuff that we can do with that for loop? That's a great question. That's what we're going to look at next. It says the following code demonstrates a loop that changes the values in an array. In this code, the array is passed as an argument to the methods in the class. Okay. The rest of that doesn't necessarily matter that much, but here's an example of using a for loop to go ahead and process all the values in an array, and it's going to take every single value in an array and multiply it by something. So that's one example of something that you can do. What I wanted to do with you guys, I kind of wanted to stray away from the lesson a little bit on CS Awesome and do some stuff on our own. So what I actually would like you to do is I took the 2 arrays that we made yesterday, and I put them into this file, and I called it arraynotes2.java. If you could go ahead and copy that and paste it into JGrasp, I'll show you the stuff that I want to do here. There's some new stuff I want to do with you guys. New stuff, but why? I know, it's taking a minute to get going here. That's okay. I know, you guys, come on, stick with me here. If you lost where I was at, if you got lost in the sauce, I know, that's kind of on you. It's right here, arraynotes2.java, the last link. I've copied it, I've pasted it into JGrasp. I have my flash drive in personally, so that's where I'm going to be saving. But I'll give you guys a second. I know it takes a minute. See, I see some of you during the 2-minute break. Some of you during the 2-minute break just sit in your seats, look at your phone. That's okay, but then the blood starts pooling and you feel really sluggish. If you're going to look at your phone for 2 minutes, you should do it while you're standing up or stretch your legs or something. Everybody says sitting is the new cancer or something like sitting is the new smoking. That's what people say, right? Well, you know, you did it to yourself over the last 2 minutes. You could have gotten up and stretched your legs. That's on you, not on me. That's a personal decision you've chosen. All right. So, again, one more time. Arraynotes2.java. Boom, right there. I've copied it. I pasted it into JGrasp. It looks like this. I'm going to go ahead and compile and save and make sure it's somewhere safe. Now, if you weren't here yesterday, this is an array of movies and their ratings that you folks gave to me. Right now, I've got code in here that will print out 2 of them. I said print out each movie's title and rating. Now, I could be a silly Billy and go ahead and do 3 more lines like this, where I go ahead and print out the second one, the third one, the fourth one. What would be a better way to do this? Making it a for loop. Okay. Now, if I go ahead and make a for loop here, I'm going to maybe I'll get rid of just one of these lines. Maybe I'll just get rid of one of these. A for loop. You guys said correctly. Make a for loop. Make a for loop. Okay. If I'm writing a for loop, zoom in a little bit for you. What index do I want to start at? 0. Okay. Now, movie ratings and I want to say each movie's title and its rating. Those are the same length because yesterday we made those arrays, we called them parallel arrays. Movie titles and movie ratings are the same length, where the 0th element in movie titles corresponds to the 0th element in movie ratings. The 1th element in movie titles corresponds to the 1th element in movie ratings, and so on and so forth all the way to the end. Or if you want to generalize, the ith element in movie titles corresponds to the ith element in movie ratings. So I'm trying to say, what do I want to count up to? Well, I could either count up to movie titles.length, or I could count up to movie ratings.length. It doesn't really matter because they're the same length. I know, I'm guaranteed they're the same length because I made them. I know it. Bless you. Bless you. No problem. And I want to count by ones. Now the only difference here is I'm going to take this line of code I already had. Maybe I'll tab it over just for looks here. And wherever I have zeros, what am I going to replace that with? I, my variable. Wow, you guys are getting this. Nice job. And if I go ahead and do that, now it's Jaws received a 98, Spaceballs received a 59, Pulp Fiction received a 92, Monty Python and the Holy Grail received a 97, The Notebook received a 53. Now if you're wondering, Mr. Foster, why don't you have curly braces after your for loop or before your for, well, I'm only connecting that one line to my loop, and if you remember, for an if statement, for a loop, if you only want one line kind of connected to it, you don't need the curly braces. Could I put curly braces? Absolutely. Spaceballs got robbed?
And the Notebook.
Yeah, that's what we thought yesterday. So, Trevor, you're not alone. They got robbed. But the users gave them good ratings, we saw. Now, let's say I want to add one more movie. Trevor, you seem like a movie buff. What movie should we add here? There's so many. I know, I just put you on the spot.
Let's do
Oh, that's a good one. Step Brothers. So let's say I add Step Brothers here, and we got to figure out what so I've added Step Brothers to my array up here. Now, if I want to add Step Brothers rating down below, I'm just going to have to change my movie ratings array so it contains 6 elements, and I'll go ahead and add one more. Let's see, what Step Brothers rating? I got to look up Step Brothers. I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see what I did. I added Step Brothers to the end of that one. I changed the size here. And now I got to figure out what Step Brothers is rated. Rotten Tomatoes Step Brothers. What are you thinking, Trevor? It's see, now again, Rob, now the audience wasn't very kind either. But we've seen Step Brothers. We know it deserves more. Yeah, they don't respect comedies. Unless it's doing like, it's a commentary on, okay. So, I just added Step Brothers to my list, and I made my list. I'm actually going to underline everything I just did because some of you scare me with the attentiveness. Many of you are on task, thank you. So, I added Step Brothers there with its curly brace. I already had the curly brace, I'm just drawing it in. I changed this number to 6. And then I added this one line to add the other movie rating for Step Brothers now. I've shown you 3 different times what I did, so you didn't get it from there, I don't know. So I'm just trying to show you, you could go ahead and add as many movies as you want to. How much am I going to have to change my loop? None. Not at all. My loop works no matter how long the array is, how short the array is. If the array had 0 elements in it, it wouldn't print out anything. If the array had 1 element in it, it would print out that 1 element. If the array had 999 million elements in it, it would print out all 999 million elements. Was that too hard adding an extra thing for you guys? Or? Yeah. It was tough. So again, all I did was add Step Brothers here in quotes. I changed this number to 6, and then I added, okay. So, one thing we did was print out each movie's title and rating. I wanted to figure out some other stuff about this array of movies and movie ratings. One thing I wanted to do, I wanted to figure out our average movie score. I'm going to zoom in. Do you guys have this now? Yes. Okay. I'm going to zoom back in here a little bit. So, I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and calculate the but we're going to do it in a for loop. Calculate the average rating of the movies. Okay. If I want to calculate the average rating, what's the thing that you have to do to find an average? You have to first Add them all up. So to add them all up, basically I want to keep a running total here. Here's what I'm going to do. Like if you were doing this in real life, you would say, okay, 98 plus 59, you'd calculate that. You'd go, okay, that's 157 or whatever. Then you'd add 92 to that. Then you'd add 97 to that. You'd add 53 to that. You'd add 55 to that to figure out your sum. If you're still not keeping track of what I'm talking about, you'd have a sum. You'd go, okay, 0 it starts at. Then I'll add the first one. That's 98. Then I'll add the next one. That's whatever. Then I'll add the next one, and so on and so forth until I've added them all together. Well, if I'm going to do that in Java, I need to have a variable to keep track of the sum. So I'm going to go ahead and make a variable called int sum. I'm going to start it at 0 because I haven't added anything to it yet. Which array contains all the ratings of the movies? Movie ratings. So I want to loop through the indices in movie ratings. I'm going to say 4. Int I equals 0. I is less than movie ratings dot length. I plus plus. Some of you seem to like curly braces. I'll put a curly brace in here for the fans. Curly brace. Left brace, enter, enter, right brace. There's many left brace, enter, enter, right brace fans out there. Try to keep them happy. Now what I want to do is every single time I want to find the next movie rating and add it to the sum. Take a movie rating, add it to the sum. Take the next movie rating, add it to the sum. Take the next movie rating, add it to the sum. Well, I could do something like this. This says the new value of the sum is the old value of the sum plus movie rating sub I, or in other words, the 0th element. The next time I'll add the 1th element. The next time I'll add the 2th element, the 3rd element, the 4th element, so on, and so on, and so on, and so on. Maybe I should show you guys what's going on behind the scenes here. I feel like some of us aren't quite getting it. Here we go. I'll just turn on the debugger for a minute. Yep, go ahead one step. There we go. Here's sum. Here's movie ratings. All right. And, okay. Can I keep track of I too? Does it not like that? That's okay. There's I. Thank you, I. Okay. Let me just move this around here and here. Okay, there we go. So, here's what Java's, the computer is keeping track of, right? It's keeping track of I, which is currently at 0. It's got my movie ratings array, and it's got sum down here. When I go ahead and step through my code, sub 0 is 98. It adds 98 to 0. Now the sum is 98. Then watch, I is going to go up by 1. So you see I up here goes up by 1. The 1th element is 59. It does 98 plus 59. That's 157. Now you'll see I up here go up to 2. So I go ahead and step again. I becomes 2. Now it's going to add the 2th element, 92, to 157. And it'll calculate that and store it in there. That's 249. Then I goes up again to 3. And so on and so forth. Then 4. Then 5. It adds all those elements. That is my sum, is 454. That's all of the movie ratings added together. I don't know if that visualization helps anybody, but if it helps one person, I'll take it. Okay. Now that sum currently can... Oh, were you guys bothered that I said sum equals sum plus instead of sum plus equals? Okay. If you were bothered, you could just change the sum equals sum plus to sum plus equals if it bothered you. I personally, I would put sum plus equals, but that's okay. I'll just do AVG. Sum currently contains all of the movie ratings added together. What do I need to divide it by? The number. And that number is movie ratings dot length. I know what you're thinking, Mr. Foster, isn't it 6 or 5 or whatever? Yeah, we could hard code it in, but what if we add another movie, and then another movie, and then another movie? Well then, What are we doing? We should be using for loops. We should have the computer calculate it for us. Then I could go ahead and print out the average, something like that. Average rating, 75.0. Oh, wait a minute. What's wrong with how I calculated the average? Int divide by an int. How could I fix that? I could do a cast. I could also do 1.0 times. That'll maybe be a little bit better.
Yes.
I know. Calculate the average rating of the movies. Not bad, not bad. Altogether, 76. I mean, you'd be happy to go see a 76% average movie. On average, we're certified fresh. All right. We've got questions on that, first of all. If you guys don't understand the point of it, because we did this yesterday, if I were to go ahead and, if I did it like we did yesterday, where we added up movie rating sub 0 plus movie rating sub 1 plus movie rating sub 2 plus movie rating sub 3 plus movie rating sub 4, and then we divide by 5, here's the issue. That works great when there's only 5 elements. If I add a 6th element, I have to change the code. If I add a 7th element, I have to change the code. If I add an 8th element, I have to change the code. What do I have to change here if I add another element to my array? Nothing. Are you guys getting this? Okay. All right. I wanted to do one more thing. Here's one of 3 options. Let's choose. We can find the longest title. We can find the highest score. We can find the lowest score. I know you can look at it with your eyes and figure out the highest score, but... Highest score? Okay. Let's do the highest score. Find the highest score. Now, I know what you're saying, Mr. Foster. I can look at 6 movies and figure out the highest score. Okay, Brainiac, I got you. But what if it's 1,000,000 titles in there? Well, you're going to look at them all? You know how long that's going to take you? Goodness. Just guess. No. All right. So... now, here's how you would do this in real life. In real life, you would probably say, okay, this is the maximum score. Then you would look at the next one, go, nah. You look at the next one, go, nah. You look at the next one, go, nah. Look at the next one, go, nah. Look at the next one, go, nah. So, essentially what I would do is start a maximum I would write down what the maximum is, and anytime I find something bigger than the maximum, what am I going to do? Update the maximum. So... If you're missing the plot here, I want to basically set the first element to the maximum. I'm going to call it max rating. How do I access the first element in movie ratings? Movie rating sub 0. Now, I know what some people want to do. Some people want to start the max rating at -99. I understand that, and you're probably going to find something that's bigger. I get you. But it's better, this is more realistic, you start the first value at whatever's the first value in the array. Start the max at the first thing, and then as you loop through the array, you'll find something bigger, hopefully. I'll go ahead and loop through my movie ratings again. If you don't feel like you can type it out, we've already written it out up above. You could copy and paste it if it's too hard to type out. And what I want to say is if any of the movie ratings are bigger than the max rating, then change the max rating to that movie's rating. I'll say it one more time. If any of the movie's ratings are bigger than max rating, change the max rating to that movie's rating. If any of the movie's ratings sub I is greater than the max rating, then what I want to do is change the max rating to that movie's rating. If any of the movie's ratings are greater than the current max rating, change the max rating to that movie's rating. That's what that says right there. Now, yes, you could put a curly brace after the if statement. Whatever. And then I'll go ahead and print out the max rating. Highest rating, 98. Now, since we did such a beautiful job writing that, what if I want to find the minimum rating? How much would I have to change? Why did my computer shut off? There we go. Yeah, just change this to a less than and maybe call it min rating instead of max rating. But I could do the exact same thing and change the greater than sign to a less than sign. And then I could find the minimum rating, which unfortunately might be the notebook, but we all know the ratings don't tell the whole story. Ratings don't tell the whole story. All right. Here's the plan for going forward. You don't have any homework over the weekend, but listen closely. On Monday, we're going to just do a ton of practice with arrays. You are going to come in and just crank out some code. So if you need to have like an energy drink before second hour or a power bar on Monday or something, come in ready to code, ready to program. If you're not here on Monday, you're going to have to crank some out on your own. On Tuesday, we are going to do an array project. I'll explain that project when we get there. On Wednesday, we have a quiz on arrays. And then I am going to demonstrate the final project for this class. Thursday and Friday are reserved as final project work days, as are Monday and Tuesday the following week. So, kind of going to be a little bit busy next week. Lots and lots of practice, looping over arrays, tracing arrays, stuff like that. And then Tuesday we'll do a little project on arrays, and then on Wednesday I'm going to demonstrate the final project, have a little quiz.
So is our final project the final?
Final project is the final. There's no final exam in here. It's a final project for this class. So you will have 4 in-class work days combined with whatever you do the following weekend. So, alrighty.